Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mike Kollin at MikeKollin.com. We're going to talk a little bit about relationships today, and we're also going to talk, because it's the same, how do I say this? It's the same subject that affects different areas of our life. So we're going to talk about how it affects relationships, and we're going to talk about how it affects your life. So the name of the song is Truth by Sappheiros. And the volume of the music will go down in about a minute. So what I started a few weeks back was I started rereading NLP books and started the at-home audio course, which is a the Practitioner course is, I think it's like 32 tapes, and they're generally about 2.5 hours each, so it's pretty in-depth. Now, mind you, I've been listening to these tapes for over 30 years, and I've listened to that set, I think it was it's either 13 times or it's 11 times from beginning to end, and then the Master Practitioner I did 5 times, the Trainer's Training I did twice. Not to mention going to these 2, 3, and 5 week trainings for 12 years, over and over and over. So I've decided there's a couple NLP books that I only read once. Most of the books that I've read them 5 times or more. Tony Robbins' book, Waking the Giant Within, I read that 13 times. Most of Bandler and Gritter's books I read a minimum of 5 times, but the one I'm rereading right now is Transformations. Let me tell you a little bit about that book. So I'm reading the soft cover right now. I'm going to start on page, if I doubt any of you will have it, but if you do, on 127, okay? But this is the softbound cover. Now I have the hardbound cover book. I don't know if they're page for page, or you know, sometimes when they make it a different format, pages might be more or less because the size, length, width, etc. of the page. So I'm starting at 125. So the reason why I'm doing this is to resharpen my skills. I want to go, see, now it's kind of interesting because now that I'm going over it now, I am really seeing pieces that didn't quite stand out back then that are just like popping right now. So it's like you just take it to the next level every time you go through this stuff. So let me pre-frame it just a little bit more. So one of the great things I love about NLP, and especially Richard Bandler, Dr. Richard Bandler, by the way, it was written by Dr. Bandler and Dr. Grinder. The way how to explain this, it's what NLP does to your brain. It like pops you out of this stuck state. It helps you to see more options and possibilities. So I'm going to read a couple stories here, and then I might share a therapeutic intervention I just did very, very recently, a couple days ago. So let's see how this goes. Alright, I'm going to start a paragraph before, and so let's see where I don't go back too far. So he says, and they gave me a long, detailed explanation. This was a client of his about where their problems came from, why they have them, how they affect their lives. And I'd say to them, well, that's really interesting, but what do you want? And they'd say, I want to change it. So I'd say, then why do you tell me all of that stuff? They'd respond, well, don't you need to know that? And I'd say, no, I don't have to know about that. And he said they'd be flabbergasted because they had just spent 5 years and $50,000 finding out why they were screwed up. So they went to psychologists and the former kind of therapy, and it just flat out didn't work for them. Now, the reason why I bring this up is because a lot of people believe you have to do this long talk therapy where you got to talk and talk about all these issues. And the one thing NLP found out is actually that doesn't help at all. It really doesn't. What helps is when you understand how to do the change work, and that's what I do. I'm an NLP trainer. We rewire, relink, and there's another word, I lost it, but we get you to shift things inside. Now here's the deal. Change does not happen on the level of the story. Change happens on context, process, or structure. So let's use the bridge as an example. When you drive your cars across the bridge, that is not where the change happens. The change happens on the structure, the beams and the wires and the girders and everything that holds it together. So that's where you make the change, is on the structure. So context, process, or structure. I'm not going to explain process or structure because otherwise this video would be an NLP video. So I'm going to share you 3 pieces or 3 stories from this book, Transformations, okay? To give you an idea of what I'm talking about. Alright, so it says, husbands and wives often make each other unhappy because they set being right as a target state. So they end up being right, but everybody ends up being unhappy as a result. Alright, so I'm following this crazy guy. So what he's setting up here is how people will get this generalization of this is what a relationship is about, okay? And the challenge is to break the generalization and to shift you in a new direction, realizing like that direction alone will always send you down a path of destruction and emotional suffering. So I think you guys saw it really clearly, especially if you followed this channel for the last 3, 4, 5 months, is, I talk a lot about the either or, and they're like, well, it's about being right or wrong, who's right and who's wrong. Well, you set it up for an unhappy result already, because someone's going to be wrong, and that sucks. So that generalization or that paradigm alone sets the relationship for a downhill spiral. Like as long as you go down that, regardless of who's right or who's wrong, it's never going to end up good for one of the people, so the relationship is not going to work for either one of them at one point in time. So what happens is, okay, people get stuck in these states or beliefs of this is the way it is, or this is the way we do our relationship, not even realizing and they can't figure out, well, what's wrong with the relationship? Like, we really love each other. And that's the thing, is a lot of times you really, really do love each other, but you're going down this path of, it's like, this is just going to make you both miserable, okay? So all we're going to do is find out, well, what is your generalization? Like, what do you think a relationship's about? And if it's about being right or wrong all the time, it's like, well, you've already lost. So we've got to shift your paradigm and or your generalization about what a relationship should be about. And I'm not saying there's this one way, this is the way it should be for everybody. But what we do is we look for counterexamples or other possibilities. See, a lot of people get stuck on one possibility. And I'm saying, hey, why don't we look into this and let's pop out of that state and let's start creating better possibilities. Now, I'll give you one right now. We could do this all day long, but one of the things that I truly believe in is creating emotionally fulfilling experiences for each other. Learning how to communicate in a way that allows your partner to just feel these amazingly warm, loving, kind, gentle feelings to where they can open up to you emotionally and connect with you on a deeper, more mentally stimulating and emotionally fulfilling level. To just create better emotions that they enjoy. Now imagine if that was your target. Imagine if that was your goal when you came home from work, was number 1, to get yourself into a better state of mind. Maybe you want to do some deep breathing, stretch for 5 or 10 minutes, take a warm shower, relax, stretch some more, drink some water, do whatever, maybe eat some food if you're hungry, and ground yourself, and then start communicating in this language, these languaging patterns that I teach to people, to where you can create a wonderful experience between the two of you. So when your other partner comes home, they can come home to this experience that actually feels good, something that they want to come home to. All right, I'll give you an example. I had a lady called me from Oakland, and right off the bat, we went into a session. I mean, it was because I was like, oh, I know exactly what's wrong here. It was so obvious. Now, here's the funny thing. She was coming from the either or, right or wrong paradigm, and what happened was, they had essentially been arguing and fighting for so long about who's right and who's wrong that it really made them, now listen closely, uptight, meaning physically. So if you've been following my videos, you're going to see where I'm going with this. And what it does, it makes your throat tight, it makes your forehead tight, makes your heart tight, and you begin to sound like this. And so she goes, oh, but Michael, and she just had this really whiny, just irritating voice. I'm like, oh my God. But now here's the thing, I almost hung up on her, to be honest with you. But I could hear in her voice that she was hurting emotionally and she really did want this relationship to work. And that was the key for me to go, okay, we're going to do this. So one of the things I do to people is I repeat back to them, I reflect back to them. Because along my journey of NLP trainings, hypnosis, meditation, especially meditation, one of the things that these techniques, especially the internal awareness techniques, by the way, I have a course and a class and a one-on-one coaching series of sessions on what I call internal awareness and being emotionally grounded, right? So what these things do is they make you become very, very self-aware. And okay, so for me, when I started to become more and more self-aware, I started becoming aware of the way I was talking, how fast I was talking. That's one of the things I still do. I tend to talk fast because I like to talk fast. So I've learned over the years, like sometimes in order to gain rapport with people, you've got to slow down. Another thing, I began to realize I was kind of stuck in my forehead and it would irritate people, and I was like, wow, so when I began to notice not only the way it sounded to me, but that the feeling I had in my forehead, I was kind of tight, I was up in my head. I thought, wow, that doesn't feel good at all. I bet when people get around me, they're like, I just want to get away from that. Because on the flip side, after doing years of acupuncture, meditation, deep therapy, energy healing, I became a much more relaxed guy and my voice began to resonate naturally and I began to feel better. And whenever I'd start to get uptight, well, then I would stretch and do deep breathing and, do whatever I had to do, grounding techniques, etc. Because it's like, okay, here's what it's like. Once you're out of the box, once you're out of prison, you don't want to go back because it's uptight over there. It sucks. It's stressful. So once you're out of that mental prison, you're just like, wow, this feels really good. Like you enjoy life. So then all of a sudden I began to understand why women have ladies' nights out or girls' nights out. It's because the male brain is stuck in the forehead. We're stuck in the left brain. Think. Whereas women just want to get out. They want to express their emotions. They want to laugh. And here's really the key word. They just want to loosen up. Whereas men want to impress, use the push energy. And that's uptight energy. Because that's the way the left brain thinks. Now, me being male, I tend to do that a lot too. So after I would meditate for a long time, I'd go out to a club at night, like usually the kind where they have couches, you sit down and kind of talk and stuff. They've got music and the DJ, and usually the dance floor is really small because it's really like a social kind of thing, and or at least the kind of clubs I went to. And I began to notice you'd see girls in like a group of 8 or 6 or 12 or whatever, and they're really enjoying themselves. And you see this male linear dude lean into the group and just like bring this completely closed energy, and they don't know they're doing it. And they're like, hey, it's girls' night out only. And as a guy, he said, and I remember because I thought the same thing. It's like, why would you come to a club if you don't want to meet guys? And from the woman's perspective, it's like, well, we want to go out. We just want to enjoy our energy. And if he had just learned how to ground himself emotionally and expand his awareness, he would have been welcome into the group. So, during this period of time, I became very aware not only of myself, but most people have very little self-awareness of themselves. So they could be talking the most irritating voice and blah, 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 and go, I don't understand why nobody wants to talk to me. Like, I'm like that now. When someone has a voice like that, I just walk away. I'm like, oh, I can't do this. So, I'm talking to this woman from Oakland. She was probably about 34, 35, maybe 32, somewhere around there. And she was talking about how she loves her husband, but all they do is fight and argue. And, she's like, every time he comes home, like, I'm telling you, it's like the minute we talk, like, we're at a point now to where we just know, like, don't talk because we're just going to yell at each other. So I tried to explain to her what was going on, what was creating it. It was it's your voice. Now, here's the thing. I didn't blame her because the voice, it's kind of like he comes home angry. She gets uptight. She speaks from this uptight perspective. Now it makes him more uptight. Now he's pissed off, and so I'm not saying it's her either or. It's both. So I said, look, he's not on the phone with me right now, so I can't do any therapy with him, but I can help you. And I can show you how to shift the dynamics of the relationship. So we talked about, like I said, do you massage him? Do you massage his feet? Do you do things that help him to relax? Oh, I shouldn't have to do that, blah, blah, blah. What does he do for me? And I'm like, whoa. I go, no, I know, I'm not saying you have to, but I'm trying to teach you, like, we need to get him to relax. That's all I was saying. I don't care how you do it. I go, first though, we need to get you to relax. So the first thing we did, and by the way, I was in Starbucks, by the way, when she called. And so the first thing we did was I had her do deep breathing exercises for about 10, 12 minutes over and over and over. I said, before you talk, take a deep breath and then talk on the breath. Most Westerners, Americans, white people, and it's not just white people, because she was an African-American lady, by the way. She had this very uptight forehead voice, this whine, and like, oh my God. And so I go, here's the deal. The reason why we do it, we're not breathing. When you breathe, your body relaxes because you have oxygen in your bloodstream, and now your body comes out of a panic, okay? Then what I had her do was I had her begin to elongate her vowels, okay? So here's how you do it. I'm going to give a shorter version of it, but we did this for about 7-8 minutes. So it was like, so you take a breath. Breathe out. Breathe in. I. So it was A-E-I-O. Did I skip one? A-E-I-O. Let's go to O. Breathe in, and then U. I usually do it much longer. I'm kind of giving you the shortened version, but it should be like, I'll do the last one the way I normally would do it. Y. Now I'm still on my throat. I can tell by the way it sounds that I'm still kind of tight on my throat. Haven't quite loosened up. So essentially when you first start, you're going to feel a little bit tight. It's going to be on your throat. You see my throat, I can physically feel my throat, my chest, and my solar plexus are a little bit tight. So if you do those exercises for about 7 to 12 minutes, you can take a break, say every 3 to 5 minutes, because it can wind you. But the more you do it, the more you'll relax. And here's what's going to happen. Your vowels are going to elongate. So when you start to talk naturally, instead of going digital, which is lip ring, choppy, like real quick, like you say A-E-I-O-U, it's not hello, how are you doing, which is very digital. Instead it becomes hello, how are you doing? Sure, absolutely. You can if you want. Even that right there, my vowels are not that much elongated. I would say that's not even medium yet. So over a period of time, I began to get her to relax, to elongate her vowels, to get her breathing going, to drop her awareness inside. And it was about an hour and a half conversation. And I said, the goal is to get you to relax. So when he walks in the door, he feels it's going to be an unconscious process. He's going to sense that you're relaxed, which is then going to allow him to relax. If you're both uptight, you're just going to keep making each other uptight. Now this is what I'm talking about, the structure. This is the structure of the way that they're doing things. Now remember how I keep saying it's about the context, process, or structure. It's not on the storyline. You can't make change on the storyline at all. You're just reinforcing it because you're rebuilding it on top of it. You're just rebuilding it. You're making it stronger. The change happens beneath that on the context, process, or structure. Now let me give you another example. So Richard Bandler says in one of our groups, a woman who couldn't say no, he had her lay down on the floor she laid down on the floor and she began to cry hysterically. She exclaimed that she was helpless and people walked all over her. He said, I asked her, what do you mean people walk all over you? Okay. Then now she's on the floor, and then he said, laying down on the floor crying, and then he says, then I started to walk across the room towards her to stomp all over her. Then he says, and he talked about her having been in enough of my group, she was smart enough to get out of the way, because Richard Bandler literally would have walked all over her. Now this physical metaphor will affect her unconscious metaphor, okay? Meaning, here she is saying, people walk all over me, she's laying on the ground, and he literally was going to do it if she didn't get up. Well, she did get up, meaning people don't walk all over you. And yes, that does affect your unconscious belief. So she said that she lived with 2 other women, and they constantly made her do everything and ran her life. Now watch what happens here. There's going to be a real shift here. So they made her do everything and ran her life. And Richard says, well, why don't you do something primitive, like turn around and say, don't do that. So he says, saying that got one of the most intense nonverbal responses I've ever seen in a person. She turned paler than she already was and said, I can't do that. I said, meaning Richard, what do you mean you can't do that? She said, well, I can't tell them no. So then he says or asks, well, what would happen if you told them you wouldn't do the dishes or you wouldn't do something else? She said, oh, it's just impossible. Now, here's what I'm leading up to right now. Now, I've actually dealt with people who've had experiences like this. Because from the outside, you're just like, well, what's the big deal? I mean, just say no, it's not. But to some people, it is the most terrifying thing in the world. Not just saying no, but other kind of issues. All right, here we go. So she had learned not to say no when she was a little girl. One day, she was about to go to the store with her mother when her father said, why don't you stay home with me? And she said, no, I'm going to go with Mommy. So she went with Mommy, and when they came back to the apartment, her father was lying on the floor covered with blood. His hand was about 2 inches from the telephone. He had been an alcoholic, and he had just died. So, as you can see, that was a very intense experience. So as we continue, it says after that, she just never said no. See, because what happened in her brain, the meaning no meant somebody could die. So she would literally do anything that anyone would ask her, and she literally couldn't say no because it was the most terrifying experience of death. Alright, so then he says after that she never said no. That meant she probably didn't keep her virginity too long. And he says that one experience with her father was enough for her to build the generalization that if she said no, somebody was going to die. Alright? So what he did, he says, I put her in a double bind by a double bind is kind of like trapping you with, I'll just read it off. So I put her in a double bind by telling her that I wanted her to go say no to someone on the other side of the room. She said, no, I won't do that. Now here's the thing, he already tricked her. Now I don't mean in a bad way, but in an empowering way. He had already gotten her to say no to him, and Richard Bandler is a very powerful man. And for someone to say, no, I'm not going to do that, it's like, wow, that's pretty impressive. So she said, no, I won't do that. And I said, did I die? She said, what? And I said, you just said no to me. Am I dead? So she went through another set of visible changes and then said, well, you're special. Now, this is what people do. They will make up, what's the word, excuse, but they'll make up, hold on. There's another word for it, I can't find it right now. But essentially, people just make up, well, here's the reason why. Okay, it's an excuse. So Richard says, I had given her an experience of a counterexample to her generalization, that if she said no, people would die. At that point, she could say no to me, and no, I would live. But she still couldn't say no to anybody else. So I had other people come up and tell her to say no. I had to build a broader base of experience on which she could do something. Okay, I'm going to shift to page 127 and go towards the very last paragraph, in case you have this book. So he goes, the nice thing is that is that you can define anything that exists as something new. You see, if you have a generalization that you can't get along with your mate, that's the same thing as like someone has to be right or wrong, or not the same thing, but it's similar, like you're stuck. It says you can go for something besides getting along. See, so now you can take your relationship, the trajectory of it, in a new direction that's more enjoyable. So you can build a totally new kind of relationship that's different. Hold on, let me turn the page. Than anything that you've ever had before, because now you're going to understand something that you didn't really know about before. Before, you were trying to survive, you were trying to get your way or be right. You never stopped and thought about what it would be like if both of you and your mate did everything you could to make your partner make you feel good. Just let me read that again. To make your partner make you feel good. All right, now let's kind of shift out of that. So I was in my left brain reading it. I don't enjoy reading while I'm doing this, but it's some really good stuff in there. So the number one thing is this. A lot of times you get stuck in this paradigm where you think, well, this is the way it is. And a lot of times you're not even conscious of it, okay? So I come along when I'm working with you, now this isn't just for relationships, by the way. This could be kind of like that lady who just couldn't say no. See, you could do talk therapy with her literally for 10 years. It's not going to change. You got to go, okay, what's going on here? What's causing this? So I do something called timeline therapy that can take you back in your memories, back to your childhood, and you'll be like, and when you get there, it is like, it becomes so obvious right in your face, like, because what happens is there's something called complex equivalence. Now, to me, that's just a complicated word or phrase. A lot of people say, well, this means that. No, it doesn't. With her, saying no means someone's going to die. And we all know that's not true. So what do we have to do is go back to find out what happened, and then we have to give her counterexamples, and then her brain will start to regeneralize and go, wow, actually that's not true. I can say no to people and they're not going to die. So what I want you to do, first of all, start listening to yourself when you say this means that, and then take a step back, like physically if you have to, and go, okay, that's interesting. Because a lot of times this actually doesn't mean that at all. That's just a belief that you have in your head. And then what you can do is you can start going, okay, well, what's a better meaning that I could associate to that? And pick out 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different meanings to give you options. Like, well, it could mean this, it could mean that. Well, what's a more supportive meaning? What's a more powerful meaning? Something that empowers me. And you can begin to, okay, here's what I did. So I got hurt really bad 5 years ago, and I was upset, and it was the whole narcissist abuse thing. It was a really nightmarish kind of experience. And I had to build my self-esteem back up, and I'm like, well, how do I do this? And I remember the power of I am. Once your unconscious mind believes that I am this, boom, it takes over and you start to feel that way. So whenever somebody posts something on Facebook that was funny, I said, yep, that's because I'm awesome. And I would say that all the time. And someone's like, Mike, that was really funny. I was like, yep, that's because I'm awesome. And I would say it out in public. I would say it to my friends. I would say it to people on the street. Like, man, that was really nice of you. Thanks for doing it. Like, that's because I'm awesome. So I started to create all these positive feelings around doing things, etc. And everything, even okay, here's the kicker. Even when it didn't make any sense at all, and they're like, well, why does that make you awesome? That doesn't make any sense. You just threw a piece of garbage in the garbage can. And then I would say, that's because I'm awesome. After saying this for probably 3 years or more about everything it didn't matter if I bought it. They're like, why do you buy that shampoo? That kind of shampoo? And I'd say, because I'm awesome. And they're like, what? Now here's the deal. Saying it over and over and over for years, every day, at least 24 times, I feel like I'm awesome. Like everything feels good. Life is, because it sunk into the unconscious mind, and that's really where it matters. So NLP is a very left brain thing. So now what I bring to the table is something completely different. It's this whole internal awareness, understanding how words create emotions, how breathing can relax you. So I go into a really physical thing once I get rid of all the beliefs and stuff like that, or shift them around. Now I started working with this lady, and I said, your own voice is not only making the people around you uptight, they start to talk in that uptight voice from their forehead. Everything's tight. Now you being in that environment, you become uptight, they become uptight, and nobody's relaxing. So it wasn't just with her husband, it was with her children, it was with her friends, it was with the lady at the grocery store. It was constant. So we spent about 12 minutes doing deep breathing exercises, and then when we start to talk, one thing I would say is, like, before you talk, take a breath in, a really deep breath, and begin to talk on the breath, okay? So one of the things you guys can do is do deep breathing exercise for a long time, and you'll do it unconsciously without even thinking about doing it. So I began to help her to elongate her vowels, drop down inside, resonate in her voice, and she started, like, her whole energy shifted, and I was like, wow, I actually like talking to this lady now. It was much more comfortable. Now the other thing I did was I shifted her into using, instead of negative languaging, which is minus signs like no, not, can't, won't, shan't, but, and that's all she did in the beginning, and I was like, I got to get out of here. And I explained to her why. She's like, what do you mean? Well, what's, and I said, honestly, but, no, can't. I go, after a while, I got a headache. And she's like, oh, okay. So as I'm talking to her, though, I was using the word and, plus, both, of course, sure, yes. These are all positive languaging, okay? I go over this in the course with you. The reason why I do it is because what I began to notice was, now years ago in my 20s, I wasn't very good at meeting women, and I didn't know why I couldn't talk to women and why they wouldn't want to talk to me and spend time with me. So I began applying some of this stuff, and one day I just noticed how negative the word but, and they taught this to us in NLP, it's like a negation word. I thought, well, what are positive words? Like and, both, plus, more, that, this and that, plus this, times, of course. So I started, I literally would take a 3x5 card and I'd write on that card, the main word was and. So I had a phrase, a mantra that I built, and both, plus and more, yes, yes, yes. And both, plus, now and both. So it's like 1 plus 1. So it's and both. Okay, the symbol and, or the word and, in math means addition. It means plus. So I'd say and both, plus and more, yes, yes, yes. What I learned over the years was, see, if you try to do all this stuff logically, you're going to get stuck in your left brain. You're going to be using negation even though you don't want to. And so I learned that if you repeat stuff over and over and over, you will shift over to your right brain. Now, I mean right brain stuff like the internal language, like solid, grounded, whole, complete, connect, mentally stimulating, emotionally fulfilling, and then add, right there, add, that's an addition word, add additional words like and, plus, both. And so if I began to pepper those into my conversations, it would begin to open me up to my right brain, and that shifted my body into relaxing. See, when you're in your right brain, the right brain is the peripheral system, which is the relaxation set of nerves that go through your body, so it automatically relaxes your muscles. See, when you begin using these words, in order for people to listen to them, they have to shift over to the right brain unconsciously. Now, humans do this all the time. We all do. If someone's in their left brain, they're using the analytical, logical words. Well, they got to shift over there to use the correct processor, which means now they're going to be uptight. Now they're going to be kind of focused, and it's going to be like this linear, logical experience, disconnected from emotions and feelings and colors and flavors and sounds and taste. So if you want to be in a social experience, you're going to want to open up to the right brain, because the right brain is the social brain. So one of the tricks that I began to learn over time was all I had to do was use words that are right brain words. And so I'd write on a 3x5 card about 5 or 7 words, and I would pepper those into my conversation, and it would slowly shift me into that brain. And on top of that, the people I was talking to, by listening to the words, it would send them into the right brain. So now we have this comfortable social environment that we're experiencing together. Now, the other thing I would do is I do deep breathing. I'd elongate my vowels for a while, and the other thing I would do is I would do the whole and both, plus and more, yes, yes, yes. Now, as I'm driving my car to the club, which is about 25 minutes away, or at least 20, I would like literally on the highway be like deep breathing and them both plus and more, yes, yes, yes. You don't have to like scream, but and them both plus and more, yes, yes, yes. You do it over and over, and you start kind of getting almost like bored and tired of it, and then it begins to elongate your vowels without even trying, like and them both plus and more, yes, yes, yes. And I'd go to the club, I'd feel completely comfortable, I'm already in my right brain, I'd walk in, and I'd just connect with people, just like that. Okay, so you know how, now this is especially for men more than women. You know how you go to a party, even if it's your friend's party and there's people there, like say 15, 20, 30 or 40 people or whatever. When you first get there, you're kind of uptight. It's the same thing if you go to a club or anything. When you first walk in, you're kind of uptight for about 5 to 7 minutes. So what happens is you're in your left brain when you're supposed to be in your right brain, because everyone there is relaxed. They're in their right brain. They're socializing. Remember, the right brain is the social brain. So when you first get there, you're uptight because you're in the wrong brain, and you don't feel like you're on the same page as everyone else. You don't feel like you're in rapport. And because of that, you don't feel connected. And because of that, you kind of feel uptight and you get nervous. So here's the deal. You can just do 2 or 3 things for 5, 10, 15 minutes. And all of a sudden, you feel relaxed. You feel comfortable. Now, who did I say felt relaxed and comfortable? You. The really cool thing about this, you don't do anything to anyone else. You don't do what I call external manipulation. You're just making a shift inside of yourself so you can feel more comfortable. Now, here's the really cool thing. People tend to feel comfortable around other people that are feeling comfortable. So it helps others to relax. See, here's the deal. You can absolutely shift your life in every area of your life. All I'm trying to say in this video is people tend to get into stuck states. Oh, this means that. This does not mean that. If you say no to someone, that does not mean they're going to die. It does not mean you're in trouble. It does not mean someone's going to be mean to you. See, we do this thing called complex equivalent, meaning A equals B. No, it doesn't. So here's the thing about men. Men are much worse at this than women when it comes to socializing. Men suck at socializing, and women, you know this. So here's what the typical thing is. A lot of guys will come to me thinking, oh, I've got to do years of therapy. There's something wrong with me. And now here's the deal. I would say most, 90+% of the men that come to me are like, well, what's wrong with me? What am I doing wrong? I don't understand. It's like there's, I've got problems. Because what happens is when you walk into a social situation, which is right brain, and a lot of men don't know that, like, because a lot of men try to be logical, and they're like, well, how come everyone walks away? Like, no. And that's what happens is people will cross their arms, they'll lean back, they'll turn away. So these are all unconscious cues that the person doing it probably doesn't even know they're doing. And what happens from about a teenage years on, like all they know is like my whole life, like nobody wants to talk to me. Like there must be, and then what happens is you do a complex equivalent. Well, this means there must be something wrong with me. And a lot of married men that have gone through divorce, they feel the same way because they come to me like, well, what's wrong with me? What's going on? Here's what I noticed. 90+% of all of your problems that are causing you fear, anxiety, causing people to walk away, causing all these, and a lot of my clients, like, hey, I've been in therapy for like 7 years, and I did it earlier after my first divorce. I was in therapy for 2 years, and nothing's changed. Well, here's what it is. It's nothing wrong with you. You're just doing things in a very left brain way when you should be in the right brain when you're in social situations. The left brain is not for socializing, and that includes business parties. So you get these men that are completely devastated. They feel like there's just something wrong with them. They went through their second divorce. They poured their heart and soul out. They don't understand why. And in women's defense, women tell you all the time, the problem is she's communicating in the right brain language, which he doesn't speak. So he literally can't, and I mean this literally, can't understand you until he learns how to open up to the right brain. See, it's the same thing with addiction. If you sit there and say, I am a drug addict, guess what? Your unconscious mind, it's going to, after a period of time, it's going to believe it. And see, the way your unconscious mind goes, oh, okay, so that's what we believe. Okay, then that's what I have to do. I have to be a drug addict. And now you're fighting the most. See, you got to understand, your unconscious mind is like 97% of who you are. That 1% to 3%, your conscious mind, or whatever you want to call that, that cannot beat the unconscious mind. You have got to send positive thoughts into your unconscious mind. So whenever you say this means that, I would be really careful of what that is. And I would shift it to something like, I'm awesome. That means I'm awesome. Hey, Mike, how come like, man, that's really cool. You know how to do that. I'm like, oh, that's because I'm awesome. Everything became a very positive experience for me. So here's the deal. You don't want to fight yourself. You see, most people, it's like they have two engines. You got your conscious mind and your unconscious mind. So let's say your conscious mind wants to go forward, but your unconscious mind is pulling you backwards. So now your entire life is going to be this back and forth constant battle, and it's going to exhaust you, and it's not going to make life fun. So I come along and say, hey, let's take both these engines, let's put them side by side, facing and going in the same direction, working together. And all of a sudden, things start to become easier. Life becomes smoother. You are now in the flow state because now you don't. It's like you took your foot off the brake and you put it on the gas. Whereas before you had one on the gas and one on the brake. It was like you were burning up your engine. You want both engines going in the same direction, and it makes. See, have you ever seen people like, God, everything just seems to happen for them? I don't know what it is. Everything seems to fall into place. It's because they're working with themselves. They're moving in the same direction together. In the Bible, God calls this atonement. Atone is at plus one. Atone. It means at one. Atonement means to be at one. The challenge with the Bible, or I should say the church, was the teachings on how to do these things was taken out a long time ago. See, a lot of people just talk on the surface level. They don't even know what they're talking about. There's an actual step-by-step process of how to get to this place of what we call being atone or at one. And even that phrase, I almost don't want to use it because, oh yeah, atonement. Okay, what does that mean? Like, oh, I don't know. And that's the thing with a lot of the older style psychotherapy. It's just like you're just talking. You're on the level of the story. You can't make change there. You have to go deep, and you have to find out what's the structure of this. For example, that woman is her complex equivalent. That literally is the structure. It wasn't what happened. See, her dad could have died, and that could have meant something completely different. For whatever reason, she, I would say, unconsciously chose to go, oh, saying no means someone's going to die. Is that true? Absolutely not. So all I'm doing is popping you out of that stuck belief, that stuck state, and then we back up a bit, and then we go, okay, what's a more empowering belief? What's something that's going to allow you to get what you want out of life and create the kind of emotions that you enjoy? The reason why I say it like that, when I say all I'm doing, is because for me, where I'm at right now, it is quite. I just did a session with a client about 4 or 5 days ago. He was blown away. It was like his whole paradigm shifted. And we did it. And my sessions generally tend to be about an hour and a half to 2+ hours. You can change. You can heal. That's the message that I'm trying to get across to you right now. You have to find the right people that are trained in the right modalities like I am. Hey, this is Mike Kollin at MikeKollin.com. If you've enjoyed this video, please click subscribe, click the like button. Go ahead and make a comment, and if you want, you can leave a donation right there in the description box. There's a PayPal link. God bless you guys. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.